So first of all, it's privilege for me to be here, to be speaking in front of all of you. I think what we have chosen the topic today is maximizing ROI on tech investments. So it's a technology summit. So we obviously wanted to talk about technologies, how we can maximize ROI. The areas that we have chosen is risk, regulatory, finance, and treasury. Now, these are the areas which are close to where we work a lot, where we have done a lot of work, where we have products, and that's where we thought about we'll talk about these areas. Two things that we thought we'll cover. One is the integrated technology for risk, regulatory, finance, and treasury. Now, why integrated? Whether it's the right time for an integrated technology investment, that's something that we would want to discuss a little. And the second part is how you make it successful. Now, I'm sure at some point in time, all of us would be part of some of these technology projects, journeys, which didn't give the right output or the expected output that it was envisaged when we started that journey. So, why that happens, what we can do in order to avoid such mistakes, that's the second part that I thought we'll cover as part of this presentation. Obviously, I would request if any of you have experiences, your knowledge, your thoughts to share on these areas, please feel free, because all of us can then get enriched about from your experience. So these are the two things that I thought we'll talk about. So first of all, whether it's the right time for an integrated technology investments, especially in the risk, regulatory, finance, and treasury area. Now, as we think about technologies, typically the first preference is given to the business part of it, which helps the organizations to get revenue, to get business. So that's typically the first part of investments that we do. And then comes the other areas, which are what we are seeing here, which is on the risk side, regulatory, finance, treasury side. Why we do that? Obviously, 2-3 reasons. One of the reason is there is a push from the regulator for a lot of these areas where they want better reliability of the decision, better controls that the organizations have. And the second is that from an organization's perspective also, where they are trying to now, after say suppose you have made investments on the business side, your revenue is there, then the control part comes into the picture, where you need to protect that revenue, you need to make sure that there is no hiccups in the running those operations, and that's where those investment come. Why integrated? Now, there have been, I'm sure some of you would remember those days when there was a flurry of activities on integrated investment, especially on the risk management side, regulatory side, where we were running projects related to data warehouses, we are running project related to data marts for specific objectives like your risk management or on the finance side. A lot of those didn't become, I would say, or achieve the objectives. Now, whether this is the right time to go about it. So two things which at least comes to my mind. One is the industry that we are in. Now, whether it's a good thing, bad thing, but the industry that we are in, we look for return on investments. We look for maximizing the investments. If we are spending money, there should be value that we should be getting. And that's where the integrated part comes into the picture, where if we are investing money on the technology, we would want to maximize the return out of that. There has been from say 10 years down the line, or if we look at say when we were there 10 years back and now where we are, there are few things which has happened compared to where we are. One is obviously the technology has changed, especially on the data side. So handling data, your infrastructure cost has reduced thanks to the cloud. There is a mutualization that can happen. So those are some of the things which now makes it more, I would say, easy for us to go for an integrated technology rather than going for an individual ones. Typically, there used to be legacy issues. One is that we haven't planned for that. So if say suppose there are investment that has been made which is on silos, saying okay, we are looking for a particular area and then we look for another and then we look for another, it becomes difficult to then integrate at a later point in time. So the planning has to be done in advance rather than on a post facto basis. Obviously, when we get those components, that's up to us. That's something that we can plan it out. But the initial part that needs to be done at the beginning. The second part is the cost of everything, whether it is the infrastructure part, whether it is the technology itself, all of that has come down, and that also then I would say allow us to go for an integrated investment. Now, how does it benefit us? So, if say suppose we go for that, what's the benefit that we should be looking to get from there? See, first part is your cost of investment. As I was saying, as an industry, we want to get maximum benefit of the investment. Now, the reducing cost of investment, because we can mutualize your infrastructure, calculation engines, your reporting, data management capabilities across these modules, whether it is on the risk side, regulatory side, compliance side, your treasury side. That's one thing. Second, reduce maintenance. Third thing is your incremental investment. So the thing is that it's not like you need to go at one go, saying that, okay, I decide I need 10 systems and then I make that investment. You decide that, okay, you need 10 systems, but you can go with one now, one say 3 months later, one say 6 months later, and then there is an incremental investment. The part that comes into the picture is that what's the technology that we are choosing, whether that will allow us to do that incremental part as our requirements develop, as we see that this is the priority, and there could be multiple different reasons for those priorities. The second part is your unlocking business value from compliance. Now, whether it's a good thing, bad thing, but a lot of the decisions that we do, and it's a heavily regulated industry, it's driven from the regulator, from the compliance requirements. So they come up with the requirement saying, okay, I need an automation, say hypothetically on an ALM side, or an automation for an EWS or a fraud or different areas. Now that becomes a priority. Now, to do that investment only for compliance purpose, obviously will not give you the value. It will give you the compliance, but then you are not getting the value out of it. So the whole idea is that if we can extract business value from tech investments made for compliance purposes, that's something that we should be looking for. And second is your longer term objectives. Going back to the previous point which I said, that we plan for it. We say that, okay, if there are things related to balance sheet management that we need to do, if there are things related to capital optimization that we need to do, if there are things related to your profitability management, allocation of your fund transfer pricing, those that we need to do. If we need to do our liquidity management correct. Now, all of these are related areas. Now, if we look at it on silos, obviously there are systems which are available, there are methodologies that we adopt for that. But if we want to then get the maximum benefit from there, that's the integration part of it, because they need to talk to each other. And that's where the third point comes, is efficient decision making. Now, these variables are interconnected, interdependent. So we should be able to get the results or impact by moving these variables, by seeing that how exactly they are impacting. If I am looking at my, say, liquidity management, how that liquidity management is affecting my profitability part, we should be able to get that answer. Obviously, we get that answer now also, but it takes time, it takes effort, and it may not be at a granular level, which helps in that decision making purpose. Your data part, your common data layer calculation engines. Now, this is I would say, a dream of all companies that has been there, that will have a centralized common data layer. Now, achieving that has been difficult, I would say, till now, and we'll have some stats there. But the idea is, when you plan it out, when you say that, okay, I'll do the investment in this manner, achieving that commonality of the data layer becomes easy. So you choose saying, okay, this is my base system, and then there are incremental systems that I will add on to that on the same platform, and that's where your additional data comes into that. Now that becomes important for us to do the third part, which is your multi-factor scenario analysis for your impact assessment. Because once my systems are talking to each other, once they are sitting on the common data layer, then they can give the outputs which can be consumed by a different system which I might be using for the analysis purpose. So doing that becomes, I would say, easier if we are looking for an integrated platform. Now, coming to that, like, how do we avoid making those mistakes that we would have made earlier? Now, this is some of the stats which I would say you would find it. I'm sure somewhere you would know that, but these are the research that that some of the firms have done and come out with these numbers, and it's I would say scary, if you see most of the investments that we made on the technology, they don't give us desired output. They don't end up giving the desired output, even if we think that those are the successful ones. But there are so many, especially the large projects, which actually are not successful. We end up abandoning them at some point in time. Now that has happened. So what was the top reasons for failure? Again, this is not something that I am saying. This is coming from the research which a lot of companies have done, and they have taken interviews of the people who were part of those projects. So typical issues were focus, your lack of focus from business users, clarity that what we want to achieve from that, skills, that investments on the implementation side, as well as your execution part. So those used to be, or those were identified as some of the issues which were there, because of which these investments didn't achieve the objectives for which they were made. Now, some of the things that we can do. So one thing which I have seen from experience, and that's also something that has come out as part of the surveys, is your delayed decision making. The technology decisions, even if the investments is small, takes a lot of time to decide, because there are multiple stakeholders within the organization. There obviously are a longer term commitment that we are making to that, and it takes a lot of time to make that decision. So one thing is that we need to reduce that time for decision making, because that's where, if the need is today, then we need to get to a decision and basically move ahead with that. The second part is selecting the right tech for integrated automation. So if you see second and third part, one is that selection of the right technology, and second is focus on implementation. Now these two go hand in hand. What we do is, by doing first, we invest a lot of time on the second part, which is selecting the technology. And by the time we are selecting the technology, that focus on implementation, the enthusiasm, that already is kind of a diminishing. So those are the two key areas that we need to do. So the first part is your desired end state architecture. So I'm sure everyone already is running with some or the other technology. So they are already running with certain technology platforms for these areas. Now, keeping those in mind, because obviously you don't want to just discard those and then start with a new journey. Keeping those in mind, and then identifying that what would be the end state architecture when I would be migrating, if something I already have, to the new platform based approach, and when I would be making those investments, that becomes important. And that's where I say the longer term perspective on a TCO, which is what's the total cost of ownership that we should be willing to spend, that we need to know. Now, one of the two parts, other thing, now what kind of technologies? So one of the things that as ACS that we have been doing is focusing a lot on no code development. Now, no code development as an underlying platform, it has taken a lot of, I would say, pain away from the changes, because one of the reason which I would say was maximum kind of failure which had come was because of the changes. So you start with something, 6 months down the line, the things have changed. Now, if those have changed, it becomes difficult to achieve those. Now, with the no code part, the changes, the configurability part of it, that becomes easier. So if, say, suppose 6 months down the line you've already implemented and you say, no, but I need these 3 things different. Now making those changes becomes extremely easy compared to your legacy, typical legacy systems which were on a typical architecture. And that's what even at ACS also that we have been focusing on, saying make a no code platform, then have your all the systems then built on top of that. So 2 things happens. One is that change management becomes easier. Your total cost of investments on a, say, 5-year, 10-year terms, that becomes lesser. And then adding to new components, basically that becomes easier. So if, say, suppose we have the 3 things that we have currently implemented and we want to add, say, 2 more things, it is basically easier to do it in an integrated platform which is built on a no code technology. So those are, I would say, some of the things. Obviously, I have had 15 minutes. It's a topic that we can talk about that for days. and we are available here to, obviously, if you want to have a discussion on that. But I'll stop here. I'll request, if any one of you have any experiences to share, feel free, because as I said, the topic, I'm sure some of you or most of you would have experienced some of these challenges in your professional journey. So thank you from my side.